If you're on YouTube right now, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes. And drop a like and a comment. Thank you. All right, Mr. Eric Hammons, thank you for joining us today. You have an interesting career in business that you and your family run called Chick Chick Coop. So today I kind of want to let our listeners hear a little bit about what something they don't get to hear about every day. However, as a vibrant business for your family, and I think a very interesting one. So today we're going to kind of dive into that some. And but let's start off talking about where you come from. So born and raised in Northeast Louisiana?
Well, I was actually born. Well, first, thank you for inviting me, Brian. But I was born in Baton Rouge, but shortly thereafter, and I don't even know what the age was, but because I was pretty young at that moment. And so we moved to North Louisiana and lived in the Swartz area for a little while. Shortly thereafter, moved to South Monroe, out in the almost Bosco area.
Okay.
Heck, I went to school at Logtown that doesn't even exist anymore, but Logtown, went there from first grade to the ninth grade. And so it was, I guess, pretty much my stomping grounds at the time. And later, my dad actually took a house from what was Northeast University there, here in Monroe, and it was a 2-story house, and he moved it to south of Monroe, and they actually had to take the whole top layer off, and they later put the whole top layer back on. And so anyway, Dad was a real hard-working man, and that was a pretty big feat. But that was my stomping grounds in the Monroe, south of Monroe. And then later on, we moved into town. Now, back when we were living in Monroe, we had about 5 acres, I believe it was. And in that 5 acres, we gardened. We were just country people, we did the country thing. We had some livestock. Believe it or not, this was even unusual for that time, but we had a milk cow. And I had 5 brothers and sisters. I was right in the center. I had an older brother, older sister, younger sister. And for some reason, I'm not sure why, but I was the only one to milk the cow. And my oldest brother says that's why he has such big forearms back then, not anymore, but because he milked that cow every day. And so that was when my childhood. And then later, my folks decided to move into town. And I was not happy about that. But
completely changed the lifestyle, didn't it?
It did. I mean, 9 years of growing up there, at least going to school at Logtown and all that. But schools had to change after the 9th grade, and so they moved us into town. And just to be real perfectly honest, I was a little bit on the rebellious side of that. But they put us into a Christian academy in West Monroe, Louisiana, and the school was called West Monroe Christian Academy. It was a little church school, which was a Victory Fellowship. And Billy Hornsby was pastor there. And anyway, just a wonderful setting, wonderful environment. I don't know if you want me to talk to you a little bit about the school, but
sure.
The one thing that just really stood out and was a real turning point for me. They had what they called Accelerated Christian Education. It was the name of the curriculum, and it had paces that you worked through. Well, our paces were late coming in, but here we were at school without the curriculum. And so the teacher there, may have heard her. She's from here still to this day, Miss Barbara Griggs. She was the supervisor or the teacher there, and she says, I want all of you to write a paper, and the paper needs to be about what Jesus means to you. And so I was, again, I was really in rebellion. And as a matter of fact, my father spanked me that morning to go to school. And because I just was refusing to go to school. So I wrote the paper, and I thought, no big deal, I'll just write something down. And I gave it to the teacher and turned it in. And then, to my surprise, that teacher gave all of our papers back to us and had us read those papers back to the class. And one, I wasn't real sure what I wrote, but it was, again, a real turning point for me, because what I wrote on that paper was about how much I appreciated my father. Mm. The one that spanked me the morning I was coming in, and how much I appreciated him, and how much I appreciated what he was doing and putting me through a Christian school and things like that. Just the opposite of the way I was acting. And anyway, the only thing I could come out of that is I guess I just realized that I was relating my heavenly father to my earthly father. Yeah. And so again, and after that first day, school was okay, and I quit the rebellion and realized that, one, I needed a savior. And so that's how I got started here in West Monroe, and got okay with being not in the country again, so.
You mentioned your father a couple of times. What did your father do as a kid growing up for work?
Well, most of what he did was he hauled motor freight, local, so he was home every night, but he worked for a company called Red Ball Motor Freight, and it was in south of Monroe. And he did that, and then he later went out on his own and had a little car lot and did some mechanicking work. He was kind of a jack of all trades. I mean, it's just hardly anything he couldn't do, And believe it or not, he later became the headmaster of the school.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you mentioned that he was a hard worker. How do you feel that your father, his influence shaped the way that you are as a man today, and your approach to work and as being an entrepreneur?
Well, Dad was an extremely hard worker, and he helped people constantly. I just remember going to different people's houses and he would always joke about it, that my mom would volunteer for him to go and fix their vehicles and things like that. But he was just an extremely hard worker, and I just thrived on working with him. I'll never forget one time we were pulling a transmission under a vehicle, and Dad said, he said, "Hey, Eric, can you see that bolt?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And, just boiling sweat off your nose and everything. And he said, well, buddy, if you could move over, I could see it too. And, so, and he used to tell that story. My father has deceased, but anyway, he's very missed, and he's just an amazing man. Later in the process, it was always my desire to be in business with my dad, okay? But another one of my desires was also to be out in the country, and not in the city. Right. And go back to kind of my roots. I had a real passion for horses. I used to work at a horse barn. I mucked stalls. I even got to the point where I was helping train their horses with them because they taught me how, and I exercised them and even broke some horses that way. And so anyway, Dad, later he went into business. The school eventually doesn't exist anymore either. And so he eventually went into business for himself. In the school business, you did fundraisers. That was just part of being in involved in schools. And so he started a business, a fundraising business. It was off of Caroli Road. The company was called Chefco. And they started out making pizzas, and then later created a USDA pizza plant. And then later it was a cookie dough company. And I was then in Baton Rouge during that time. I had my wife and I, she and I met in San Antonio. We were going to a Bible college together. She was from South Louisiana. I was from North Louisiana. And Lisa and I, we met and later got married. It was called International Bible College, but it was really better known as International Bridal College, because a lot of men found their mates there, and vice versa. So we got married. We lived in Baton Rouge because that's where she was from, that area, and we lived there for about 9 years. I kind of followed the corporate ladder deal. Went to work for Mazda, or I started out with Nissan at a dealership, and I went there and was just basically a receiving parts manager or receiving parts guy, and then later got to be a what do you call them? The guy that checks in the cars anyway for services, a service advisor. So I became a service advisor, and then the dealership opened a new dealership called Mazda, Diamond Mazda, and I was elected to be the service manager there. All the while wanting to live in the country. I lived 7 miles from the dealership that I worked at, but it took me almost an hour to get there. It was just terrible, you know.
Traffic and everything comes along with it.
Right, and I go there every now and then, and it's no better. It's worse actually. So anyway, I just still had a true desire to be out in the country. As a matter of fact, one time Lisa and I, one of our first dates was we went to a movie. And it was basically horse related, and the horses at the time was my passion. But she didn't know that because we just, we were really on our first. It's actually a double date, and I told her, I says, you don't know this about me, but horses is really my passion, and so one day I really want to get back into that and to have horses and all. Which obviously we weren't going to do that in a subdivision,
Right.
So anyway, the movie was The Man from Snowy River. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's a great movie. So. They actually had a sequel to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the movie you're talking about.
Yeah, they actually had a sequel. So we went to that, and I told her about my passion for horses. And later in life, we sure enough got into some horses when we did move back to. Then after 9 years, we moved back to West Monroe.
So what actually brought you back to West Monroe?
Well, when my dad started that business and the opportunity came for me to participate, I invested in the company. I was made partner in the company, and so that's what brought me back.
You said it was on Caroli Road?
Yeah, it used to be the old Ken's Coffee service.
So is that building still standing?
It is.
Is it right across the street from Max?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I know the place.
Yeah, it used to be. It actually used to be May Foods. You remember that?
Yeah.
Can you go that far back?
A little bit.
But anyway, that's where it started, Chefco, and then later my mom she got a flyer, and it was about cookie dough, and she said, "Eric, what do you think about selling cookie dough for fundraisers?" Well, I thought it was a great idea. I said, get some flyers, let's try it and see, because we were already into the refrigeration, and we had the capability of making that work, whereas most fundraiser companies wouldn't, because they didn't have refrigeration and freezers and things like that. So we then built another facility on Bar Lane in West Monroe, and because cookie dough just took off, and I would venture to say is still the number one fundraiser in today's market today. Yeah. So we did that. And so that's kind of, all the while wanting to live in the country. So I actually did buy a place out in Rocky Branch, and that's been 35 years.
How big of a place is it?
Well, the original property I bought was just 12 acres. And then later I bought another 24 acres that adjoined it. And then you and I met, and I actually bought 10 more acres.
Yeah, across the street.
Yes, through your company. Yeah. And so 20 started out 12, then 24, then another 10.
So what happened? What ended up happening to the cookie dough company?
So, like most businesses, you sometimes you have events, and they're not necessarily good events. And we had basically one of our large companies that went bankrupt, and they put us in a bind. Which I'm not just blaming that company as much as we had put ourselves in certain situations. But anyway, we ended up liquidating that company. Now the company does still exist under new ownership, but we ended up liquidating the company. And
well, it's a testament to the forethought that foresight that your father had, because the company that carried on today is pretty massive, and to know that an idea that he had is still carried on and it's still viable. But with many businesses, sometimes you're faced with adversity. Adversity hits. Sometimes you're able to make it. Sometimes you're not. But it looked like you guys were able to take that adversity and be able to redirect that energy into something else. So, when did you guys pivot from the corporate world into saying, you know what? I think we may have something that we want to try on our own. Mm-hmm. How did that process get started?
Well, when we moved away from the cookie dough company is when that happened. One, I really wasn't in a good position because I really did everything I knew to try to keep the company alive and such. And I always say that, we fought it for 3 years. And but I aged 20 years during that 3 years.
I can understand that.
I learned what anxieties were, and I have a great appreciation for anybody that goes through those hardships, today, because it's a very difficult time, and obviously, I see it a lot different now after having been gone through it. But anyway, so we knew that there was an opportunity here for a whole different, maybe career, but the thing, I told you I had a horse passion. I loved horses. So I was trying to think of a way that I could somehow integrate that into a career, and I wasn't finding it. So then I knew it had to be agriculture. I always told my wife, I said, I should have been a farmer, I don't know if that's a good life or a bad life, but it's just what I love in life, is agriculture. And the other thing that I tell people this all the time, I love the people of agriculture. Our customer base today, bar none, there's none better. I mean, they are amazing people, and we just love our customers. We've out of thousands of customers, we may have had a couple of just kind of, I don't know about this one, but all the rest are just amazing people, and
there's something to be said about that I don't want people to miss in what you're talking about. To have a vibrant business, you cannot be detached from the customer base. If you have a relationship with the customers, you can truly identify what the customer needs and what they appreciate. So when I hear you talk about your love for your customers, it just goes to show me how much relationship you have with your customers to know how to service them in a way to where you appreciate what they bring to your family and vice versa. But before we go into that, I want you to kind of set the stage of where you're at in your family life when you guys are starting this. We know that you're married at this point. Did you guys start a family? Is this a family business? Is this just you and your wife doing this? Kind of set the stage. Tell us what's happening in the background.
Well, I have a son and a daughter. They're 5 years apart. They're both married. The beauty of this is my daughter and her husband, they purchased 5 acres that adjoins my property.
Wow.
And then right next to them is my son and my daughter-in-law that have several acres there next to them. And so we're all right there together. And it's just a vision come true is what it is. And I always wanted that, always thought to myself, why not work together as a unit versus, this one moved to Dallas and this one moved to Washington or whatever,
And that may work for some families,
yes.
But to fulfill what, all the way going back to when you were a child and the closeness that you worked with your father and knowing that you love the country lifestyle and now you're getting to live that out with your kids.
Yeah, and the other big passion I have is my grandkids. So my daughter, she has 4 boys. My son, he has 2 boys. So we have 6 grandsons, and they are so precious to me, And so as far as if nothing else continued, I've lived a good life, just because of that. I just enjoy their company and being able to, because I'm independent, I can kind of set schedules and go to ball games and things like that.
I don't want to get you too far off track, but I think it's important to know, which I already knew, but I wanted our listeners to be able to understand that this is kind of coming full circle. It's not just about this amazing business that your family's created, that in a sense, you're having your cake and you're eating it too in this situation.
Right.
So getting back into the business of y'all trying to figure out what to create and how you come up with the idea.
So I was, I was speaking about horses and didn't find a venue there for me to work in. I was reading an article in Wall Street Journal, and the article spoke about the chicken craze that we were experiencing, not in the United States, but across the world. And the chicken craze, it went on to talk about it and said that it's not a fad. In other words, it's not going to go away. It's here to stay. And now I'd already had some experience with some chickens and some good, some not so good. I had a nice pristine barn that I loved to keep it really nice and kept and that kind of thing. And I had a guy give me 11 hens, and we just turned them loose out in the barn, didn't know any better, and they made a big mess. And so eventually I said, I don't like this mess. I want to get rid of them, but one day I want to get them again. And when I do, I'm going to have a chicken coop to put them in. I'm not going to just turn them loose in the barn. And so we went ahead and got rid of them. But here's the crazy thing. You want to learn about chicken math. We had 11 hens or 11 chickens given to us, not just hens. And when we bagged them up to give them to the new owner, we had 50. That's how many. And I had no idea we had that many hens, but they were in the rafters. They were everywhere, and eggs everywhere. And the crazy part is we never ate not one of those eggs because we didn't know where they were and how long they'd been there or anything, or if they were about to hatch. Obviously, they were hatching. I mean, we'd look up one day and it'd be a bunch of little baby chicks just running around. It's like, wow. And so, we got rid of those. And so later, as the story goes, my wife, she being the good wife, she one Christmas, she bought me a chicken coop from a local chicken coop provider. And it was not my idea of a chicken coop. I mean, it was somebody's idea, but it just wasn't mine. And I put it together, and I didn't express that because it was a gift, Brian. You don't just, from your wife. So you don't just express this is a piece of junk, you just put it together. And the most impressive part of the whole thing was I could put it together, and that was about it, And sure enough, one day she was mowing the grass with a zero turn, and she hit that coop and tore it up. And I acted upset.
It didn't hurt your feelings, did it?
But it did not hurt my feelings. I was glad it happened and ready to get rid of it. And then it was at that point I was really thinking on how to build a good, sturdy, sure enough chicken coop. And that's how that began. And then, like I said, I read that article. It was at a time that I was going to need to do something different.
What year roughly are we talking about?
We've been doing this now 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah. So it's been 9 years ago. And so anyway, there's a gentleman, he recently passed away. He's a dear friend of mine. And his name is Gerald Purdy. And Gerald lives in the West Monroe area, or lived in West Monroe. And so I got with him because he was real good about building dies and punches and things like that would support my building chicken coops, And we'd get together. We actually he had a place in Calhoun. We went there, and every morning we would pray together, and we'd ask God for his wisdom, and we would to how to build this coop, and we'd start working on it, And I had my ideas of what the coop needed to be, and he had his ideas on how to get it to that point. And so that's how that came about. We built a prototype, okay? At this point, we had no sales. We didn't even know if we were going to get a sale. But we built a prototype, and we took it to Canton Trade Days in Canton, Texas. And I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm familiar. I've never been there. I've always wanted to go. I hear it's a pretty big spectacle and take you several days if you see everything.
Yeah.
How big was the first prototype?
It's basically the same size as we build now. It's a 6x9. You're talking about the size measurements. Yeah, it's a 6x9 at the base and 8 foot 6 inches by 9 feet 6 inches overall.
So it was definitely trailerable to be able to get it out there.
Yeah.
So you set it up. You're at Canton. You've a lot of time designing, building, trying to get the best product you can get, something that you can be proud of. You're there at Canton. How does that go?
Well, I was just amazed. One, I had no idea so many people had already had chickens. I mean, I would ask people, do you have chickens? And they say, oh, yeah, we have chickens. I was like, really? I mean, I was just shocked at how many people. It seemed like everybody I asked, and I'm sure it wasn't everybody, but it seemed as if everyone I asked, they had chickens. And so that was really helping my demeanor, because I was thinking, wow, people do have chickens. And then we ended up selling 9 chickens that weekend, 9 chicken coops that weekend. And that was phenomenal, As a matter of fact, the prototype I built, there was a gentleman who bought it, and my wife was not happy with me. She says, what are we going to do? We don't have anything to show now. And I said, well, babe, we're just going to have to build some more chicken coops. We got 9 already we got to build. We need another one that we can show, but God just laid it all out for us. I mean, actually our model is an amazing business model. We always show a customer's coop. That way we're able to deliver more coops to the customers, and they appreciate that. Because they're anxious to get their chicken coops. So it's just been a really, things have happened that I never would have planned on, but the business model just kind of unfolded itself. And, I'm not going to say I had nothing to do with it, but.
Isn't it amazing how if you allow to God work through your life the way God wants to work through your life, how much better his plan is than our plan. If I was able to do everything the way I wanted to do it, number one, I'd mess everything up. Mm-hmm. But number two, I play so small when it comes to the plan that he's laid out before us. I'm not thinking 25, 125, 1,000 moves ahead, like he is for us in that way. But getting back to the prototype, so you knew what you didn't want in a chicken coop. You got to build one of those and see it firsthand. What did you want? What do you think separated your design? And I'm sure, I don't know if your design has changed any throughout the years. I would think there's probably enhancements that you've made. But what did you see in your design that made it better or more attractive to the people who were trying to raise chickens, whether it be for the substance of them, getting, whether it be meat birds or getting eggs from it, or just the joy of doing it.
Right.
What do you think separated your coop from what you had seen?
Well, I want to think that I'm a good listener. And what really I think made the biggest difference is I listened to customers. The other thing is, when I first began to build a coop, I had two people in mind. I had the gentleman as a husband, the lady as the wife. I had him and her in mind. And I knew that he wanted to touch and feel that coop and ask me what gauge is the metal's going to be, what gauge is the wire, are the components going to rust? Is a raccoon going to be able to stick his paw in there and get that chicken? And because they can, I mean, they can't in our coop, but they will.
Raccoons are so smart, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I tell people it like this: everything likes chicken, including me, and probably you too, right?
Definitely.
So everything likes chicken, and so and I listen to customers. So when I built it, I knew that what the man wanted out of a coop. He wanted to make sure it was durable. He wanted to make sure it's going to last. He wanted to make sure it's going to be worthy of his investment. Now, the ladies, they wanted all those things too, but there's one really important piece to what she wants, and that is that coop has to be adorable. And I really believe our coops are adorable. I think when I was building the coop, basically it's all metal with a little bit of wood for them to roost on and little dividers for them to lay their eggs in and things like that. But beyond that, everything's metal. And so I went to my wife and I said, okay, so I have built this metal chicken coop or this metal structure. How are we going to make this beautiful? Well, she was the perfect person to go to because Lisa, she likes nice things and all, and so she come up with the idea of putting a copper and brass weather vane on the top. She come up with the idea of putting knobs on all the lids and the doors, and having, instead of just hinge doors, we have barn doors that roll side to side, and things like that just are just a special touch. And one of the things that she came up with is to put a chandelier in the coop. Now, we took a vintage chicken feeder and we repurposed it into a chandelier with glass crystals that are solar powered, that come on automatically at night, go off during the day, and it comes with an additional light in the back. But anyway, my kids said, "Oh, Mom, please, that is so embarrassing." Well, it's the best marketing tool we have. And believe it or not, more people buy our coops with the chandelier than buy it without the chandelier.
I can believe it.
Yeah.
I can definitely understand that.
So that's how, and then the fact that we just, Brian, we listened to customers. Was our first coop like today's coop? No, it wasn't. What's changed? Whatever the customers tell me. Not all of them, but if I always listen to their ideas. I'll never, one elderly lady, they call her the chicken lady, and she came up and she says, "Sonny, you're going to have to change the size of that wire." I had a 1x1 wire. And she said, that raccoon could put his paw in there and get them chickens. I said, okay. That very day, I talked to Lisa. I said, let's order a 1/2 inch by 1. And we've been putting that on ever since. So and I could go on and on about different customers' ideas, but
Sure.
they are the true improvement to our coops.
I mean, without the customers, you don't have anybody to sell your
Right.
coops to, right?
Right, and they're not worth a flip if you don't listen to the customers because they have the best ideas. So
When so you've been in business for 9 years. You guys are you probably just didn't hit like a boom overnight. It was probably a steady increase as word starts getting out about the product you're offering, because you're not offering a slap together coop that you can pick up at your local hardware store.
Right.
You've got something that's very custom, it's durable, it's meant to last. And when you start throwing durable and custom together, it's not going to be the cheapest thing on the block.
Right.
But I'm sure you're always trying to look for value to be able to bring to your customers. So we're creeping along, your business is growing, and then COVID hits. Everybody kind of gets locked into their houses, not able to go, and people start thinking about the world a little bit different. How did COVID impact your business?
Well, you've ever heard the terminology, who is essential and who's not? We became essentials. I think everybody's essential, but, in the term of which they were referring to, we became essentials. When we first started the business, we sold the 9 coops that very first weekend, and ever since then, we were 60 to 90 days out. When COVID hit, we became 6 months out because the orders were just flooding in for our coops. But by that time, people had started to learn about our coops and what quality they were.
Right.
And when I tell you, I've never put a number to it, and I should, but I have multiple coops, multiple customers who have multiple coops. One of the gentlemen that I'm working with right now, he has 5 of my coops. I had another customer who had 5 coops, 2 and 3. My point to saying that is you don't get a second one at the price point and all that if you didn't like the first one, right? I mean, that's, I think, the definition of insanity. So, so anyway, it's COVID. Really, we took off during that time. I mean, it was so busy, and
but how do you scale with something? As an entrepreneur, you build a business for sustainability, and when business starts taking off, you don't want to go and just buy all this tons of new equipment and make all these hires, because you never know what is real demand versus inflated demand. So going through that to when you went from, 60 days out to 6 months out, how does an entrepreneur like yourself look at that and say, we got to start scaling, or this 6 months going to turn into a year in 6 months?
Right. Well, one, I realized that is a COVID situation, and I didn't just think that we were really just growing to that extent for any other reason than COVID, and because people were in their yards, they were back home. They were trying to accomplish what they really desire, and then that is a lifestyle. Right. They want a lifestyle that is simple and a lifestyle which they can know what's in their food. They were not just putting out chicken coops or getting chickens in chicken coops. They were also planting gardens and doing the things that they really wanted for their lifestyle. Now, unfortunately, a lot of them had to go back to work and go back to the office.
And didn't have the time for that lifestyle anymore.
And they I'm sure some of that suffered. We struggle with it ourselves because we're busy people too, But, we have raised beds, we have gardens, we have, goats, we have horses, we have cows, and, we have all that. But in the busyness of life, it's difficult, but doable if as long as you got good products and, good facility to be able to facilitate it, And so anyway, that's it is a difficult thing, but you're careful. There's a lot of people that were telling me you need to just hire a lot more people. Well, I know what comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
I've had businesses in the past, I've had in excess of 200 employees at one given time. Not going to do that, because you just have to be careful and not overextend yourself.
Sure.
Today, we put out a coop on average, 1 coop a day today. When we first built that prototype, that took me 30 days. My wife was getting nervous. She was like, I don't think we're going to keep our same lifestyle and make a living on a coop every 30 days, But now we put out a coop every day. And we do it with minimal people. We don't try to overhire, because we want these people to be settled at their jobs and
be the best they can be.
Be the best they can be and not have to worry about whether they're going to be let go because of, business or be replaced by someone else because there's so much going on or something,
So from a scalability standpoint, you're not building a product that you can package up in a cardboard box and send it to California, overnight.
Mm-hmm.
The customer base that you have, I would assume, is a lot larger than what one person would think, because you're having to deliver. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a trailer that is, that's about all it's on is 1 coop. I don't know if you have the ability to put more than 1 coop on a trailer.
Yeah.
But it's a big product that's being shipped out. So how far of a reach does your company have?
Well, we go it's kind of funny because I have coops in Chicago. I have coops in Illinois. I have coops in West Virginia. I have coops in Colorado. I have coops in New Mexico. But that's not my reach. That's just people that desired enough to meet us somewhere or come pick it up and trailer it for themselves, which happens a lot, But we pretty much cover most of all of Texas. We go as far as Kansas, Missouri, Tennessee, and Alabama, Georgia.
Wow.
Yeah, just that spectrum there.
But as a business owner, doesn't it make you just sit back and when the time quiets down and just be amazed that you have people from Illinois or from California or from Colorado that loves the product enough to where they're willing to drive all the way here to pick up their chicken coop and take it back home with them?
The customer in New Mexico, they actually purchased a trailer from our local West Monroe, Cowboy Trailers in West Monroe, Louisiana. They purchased that trailer. I went and picked up their trailer, loaded their coop. They drove in from New Mexico and grabbed their new trailer and their new coop and took it home with them. So, yeah, it is really thrilling. I had the one in Colorado, that customer actually had me deliver their coop to Kentucky, and I did. But then things changed for them, and they never moved to Kentucky like they thought they would. So they went, it was at their parents' place. They went to Kentucky, picked it up, and took it to Colorado. So, yeah, it is really thrilling to see that happen. But the coops are nice enough, and I do get more than one on a trailer. I get up to 3 on a trailer.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What do you think is driving the whole backyard? I don't know if you want to call it a hobby. I just call it backyard chicken lifestyle. What do you think is driving that? Because it hasn't. I don't think it's slowed down. Even in my neighborhood, I live in the city limits of West Monroe. In the middle of town, and I wake up every morning, walk in my truck, hearing chickens in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Last week, I seen a rooster running down the street. So, it has become a way of life, even in the city. What do you think's driving that?
Well, I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, where people are wanting a slower lifestyle, and there are a lot of people that would even like to have a farm, but they know they're limited, because they have little properties. Okay. But chickens is a different ballgame because I've actually taken the front gate down so that we could squeeze the coop into their backyard, into subdivisions. And because it takes really a very small space to put a coop in your yard. And also, all of our coops are chicken tractors. So if you want to move them all over the place, you can. And they're easy to move. But, you just need a small space and you're getting a great return, because you're getting fresh eggs. And so I think that's one thing that's driving it, and because they can, and it's a lifestyle that they really desire to have, but they know they have limitations because of where they're located. Now we have lots of farms and places like that have coops and multiple coops, and so I think it's that's driving it. They just want a slower, simpler pace and go back to maybe our roots, if you would, because at one time everybody had chickens. But I think today it's different than what it used to be. I don't think it's just for the eggs anymore,
How important do you think it is? I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm thinking back to you talking about your upbringing, as a young kid growing up, not on this massive farm, but on some land. From your perspective, a family that has some younger kids, to being able to have a coop, how do you think it impacts that child's life of being able to interact with animals like that?
That's another thing that really interests parents because, parents want their children to learn responsibilities. A chicken is a living, breathing animal that requires some care, and the children actually get to do that and be responsible. And another thing is the chickens, kids love them. They're fun for kids. And the funny part is chickens love kids. I've got a grandson that we actually have a video on a Facebook page one time that he was putting the chickens on a little tight slide, and the chicken would slide down the slide, and then it would wait at the end for them to do it again, And so it didn't run from them. It let them just pick them up and let them slide again. So I think, people are just, it's good for their children. It's good for their food. They know where their food's coming from. They know it's not been tampered with because it's right there in their yard. And they can go get those fresh eggs every day. I told one of my guys checked my eggs this morning, and I said, well, they're probably not going to be any because I got some late yesterday evening. He said, no, there was 12 eggs in here this morning. I said, really? I said, but anyway.
So your coop's designed. What's the appropriate amount of chickens for your coop?
We have different ways of doing it. You can get just our standard size coop, which we say stay under 12 hens. But like I said, in some people's backyards, they may have three hens in their coop. But with that, you're getting 3 eggs a day. Because they can on average lay an egg a day per hen. But anyway, that one we say stay under 12. Our larger coop, you can actually double the capacity.
Wow.
And so you go up to 24 hens in it. We also have extra runs. If you just feel like you want them to have more run, you can attach an extra run to the coop, and it's just going to double your footprint. So if you have a 9-foot coop, it's going to be 18 feet at the base.
You mentioned that your coops are all pretty much all metal except for your hen boxes are going to be wood. Is that pretty much the standard out in the marketplace with other coops? What's kind of the life expectancy of one of your coops? What can people expect?
Well, I believe, and it's yet to be seen because, but I believe your coops can last you a lifetime. I mean, I've had my coop 9 years, and I mean, I could clean it up really nice, and you you would question how old is it. You might think it's a year old, or maybe not even that, because I'm not going to be able to get all of it off. But so we basically say our coops will last you a lifetime, and because they're a metal building. I mean, if you go and look at all the metal buildings in the Twin Cities, you're not going to be able to tell me how old they are unless you just know their history.
Sure.
You're not going to look at the building itself and say, "Oh, that building's about 20 years old." And that's the beauty of our coops is, 20 years from now, the coop will still look like it does today. So.
Well, I'm really pleased to hear that. I think we're a lost art when it comes to building things to last. We're a throwaway, seems like generation. When I was a kid growing up, there were places that when your TV broke, you would take your TV to. Now when your TV breaks, you just throw it in the trash can and go get another one at that point. So nice to hear that when you build something, it's built to last. It's of that quality where it's built to last. Funny thing, we selling houses. You go in and we start talking about the components of a house, and a water heater will come up. And I've only had, I've lived in my house quite some time. When I had to change out my water heater, it was almost 40 years old. Oh, wow. Nowadays, if you have a water heater that lasts 8 years, you really hit a milestone.
Yeah, you did.
So knowing that you build something to last is, I think, is pretty impressive in today's throwaway, type of economy we seem to be in. You were going to say something?
Well, I was going to say that, it's more than just about eggs. I mean, I have had, and I can tell you story after story after story of people who have had chickens that have had big crises in their life. Like I've had ladies come to me and say, I had breast cancer, and I don't know how I made it through it without my chickens, because it just helps. It's therapy. I had a gentleman who was a bodybuilder, and he had chicken eggs for that purpose because he ate a lot of eggs, but he also became an alcoholic, and he actually admitted himself into rehab, and he told me, he said, "Man, if it wasn't been for my chickens, I don't know how I'd have made it." They're just so much.
And something to give you purpose.
Therapy, and then the therapy's a good thing. The food source is a good thing, but I think the big thing is just the lifestyle. I was thinking about my shirt here. This is my old logo. I've since went with a new company that's I don't know how new they are. They're new to us, but it's Kirkland Enterprise. And anyway, we're just now getting there, and I'm hoping to get a new, because they rebranded us. But the reason we went to them is because we were working with another company outside of the city. So I always would recommend you use someone within your city.
Yeah.
That and you just get some great benefits from that. But anyway, we left the other company because we could not get them to understand that this is a lifestyle. And we're a lifestyle company. And this new company, Kirkland Enterprise, they get it. They've been to our place. They've done media days. They've come to learn who we are. You know what I'm saying? And so that to me made a
but that's
big
who
difference.
You are as a company. You get to know your people, know who they are, because if you don't know who they are, how can you build a product that they're going to be able to stand behind, and how your industry is going to thrive? You talk about, and we're touching on now, is how you listen to the customer base so that when it's time for you to make tweaks, you can make the right tweaks to the product. But function over aesthetics. You can build a coop that is going to be practical, that's going to achieve proper, hen growth and health, and capture eggs, nesting box, and all that stuff. But it can be the ugliest thing else. But one of the things I hear people talk about is how beautiful your hen houses are, your coops are. So how do y'all, and you touched on it briefly about the chandeliers that's in it. and I think you'd mentioned your wife is inspiration for a lot of this stuff, but how do you manage the aesthetics over the function?
Yeah,
I
functions.
think both are important. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. And so why I always, when I first started building the coop, it had to be about him and her, and he's not as interested in the aesthetics, although. In some cases, if he's going to get a chicken coop, the aesthetics has to be nice, or she's not going to allow it.
Right, because if mama ain't happy.
That's right. So anyway, but you're 100% correct. They do work together, and typically, and I've had people even just come out and ask, "How did you do it? How did you get something so practical and pretty?" Because usually it's either or. You don't get both, and that's how I did it. I just had him and her in mind. I mean, our coops are designed to where if you wanted to take a 10-day vacation, your coop will sustain your hens during that time.
Wow.
Because we have a feeder that hold a 40-pound sack of feed. We have a door that locks your hens up in the hen house every night and lets them back out every morning automatically without you being home to do it. We have a 12-gallon waterer. I mean, it's just not a whole lot for you to do, even when you are home, whether you're on vacation or not. Even if you're home, there's just not a lot for you to do. I'm going to sell you a coop here soon, Brian. So
it may happen.
Yeah, but it's just, because a lot of people are concerned about that. They want that lifestyle. They want those fresh eggs. They want the kids to see the responsibility and know where their food is coming from. They want those things, but they also don't want it to burden them and to keep them from being able to do things. With our coops, you're able to. I mean, nobody travels any more than I do, I assure you. And that's another thing I wanted to make mention. I deliver most of my coops, except for those that come pick them up. I deliver them personally myself, and that's how I get to know my customers. And that's why I'm so engaged with the customers, because, I mean, I'm there, I'm demonstrating the coop, I'm unloading it for them, I'm putting it where they want it, I'm showing them how they move it, I'm doing all those things. And so I'm in contact with those people. Now, am I busy? Yes, I'm busy. But do I love my customers? Absolutely. They're great,
For listeners, so I always say I got two more things, but sometimes it comes. So give me some grace here. But I got two things I'm thinking about right now. So number one, for listeners considering backyard chickens, what would you say to encourage them?
Oh, I'd tell them do it. I mean, it's going to be fulfilling. It's going to bring joy to them. People fall in love with their hens. I have people that named all their hens after the first ladies and things like that. I mean, they just, there's so many different breeds. They love the different breeds that are out there. They get all these beautiful, I never would have thought I'd admit this, but I actually kind of get into the beautiful, different colored eggs. Okay. Who'd ever thought there's such a thing as beautiful eggs? But some of these hens, they lay these deep browns, these almost chocolate brown eggs. Some are green, some are blue. I mean, they're just beautiful. I never thought I'd admit that, but anyway. So I highly recommend it. Do it. It's easy. It's not complicated, and it's so rewarding. And so I recommend you do it.
From an entrepreneur standpoint. And I'm going to hit this more specifically on operating a family business. What kind of encouragement would you give, or caution would you give to someone that wants to start a family business? What I mean by family business is having your spouse involved in that business, having your kids involved in that business. What's some practical advice that you would want people to know?
Man, that is a difficult one because, I have an amazing spouse, and she's a very hard worker. She does more than she needs to be doing, So one bit of advice is make sure you have, each of you are willing to put out probably more than what you feel like you should have, because it sometimes just becomes that. Unless you're just much smarter than I am. I know I just find that it's a lot of hard work. It is hard work. There's some, a lot of people think there's a whole lot of glamour to being self-employed. And it certainly has its benefits.
But hard work comes before all that glamour.
But hard work comes with it. You're going to work harder for yourself than you're going to work for someone else. And
if you want to be successful.
If you want to be successful. And at least in my experience. And so if you're not willing to do that, then maybe that's not for you. But if you're willing to do that, I wouldn't have it any other way. When I had to make a career change, one, I wanted to be agricultural related, but I really couldn't see myself doing anything different. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Working for other people. I mean, that has its benefits too. You don't have to go through the stress and things that you just do your job, but, but just be willing to work hard, because it is hard work. Anybody that's been around us, they'll tell you we work really hard,
End with this one. Tell me what faith means to your family in this business.
Well, it's the very center of it. Christ is the center of family, and he's center of business, and it's really not difficult to make decisions, because they have to be Christ-based decisions. And if it errs on the side of that, then just don't do it, and but he has to be centered. And let me say it this way, he has to be kept centered, because, we're just fallible people, and we oftentimes let our flesh get in our way. But we need to keep him center of our business, your marriage, your business, your relationships, your friendships, all of that. So that's what it means to me.
Mr. Eric, thank you for your time today.
Appreciate you.
And wish you and your family the most success. And it's just been since you'd mentioned Kirkland before, I've got to kind of see a little behind the scenes as, we talk, my daughter works for them. And I get to hear her talk about, getting out of college, going to work, and, being one of their clients. And it's been fun listening to her talk about it. So can't wait to see what you guys do next.
All right. Well, thank you. I've enjoyed being here with you. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.